Clearly, one of the most important texts in the Old Testament having to do with creation theology would be Genesis chapter 1. And this is one of the texts that's assigned to you for this week to do an inductive study. So I've got it here before us. And once again, I'd suggest that starting with a look at structure is a pretty good place to start. We've got these first couple verses which kind of function as an introduction, and part of what you have to decide is what does this text, these two verses, stand over against in terms of the rest of these verses that make up chapter 1 and go a little ways into chapter 2. So is this an introduction just to the first couple verses, or is it introduction to something bigger than just the first couple verses? So now there's a first section in the beginning, this thing, let there be light, and there was light. And most everybody knows that the report of the creation is laid on the framework of 7 days, right? And as you look at the story, they got this repeated phrase at the end of each the work of each day of creation. There's a second day, and so on and so forth down through this text. I won't go through all of them right now. I want to miss some of them, but obviously you'd go through and you'd look, okay, we got the 7 days of creation is kind of laying as the main framework for the structure of this chapter. But then, especially when you get down near the end, there's something very interesting. So the chapter division seems not to make a whole lot of sense, or doesn't seem to be connected to the meaning of the text, because it's true we do have, up to this point, we've got 6 days going on, but we're going to deal with a 7th here. And we have this word right here, conjunction, that shows the logical relationship between what comes after with what comes before. And so it's clear that this thus points you back to the stuff that came before, and whatever this thing is, it's somehow related to what came before. So in a certain kind of a way, you have the same question for this section that you had for the first one. To what is it related? Is it related just to the stuff that came in just a couple verses before, or does it go all the way back to the entirety of chapter 1? Now, as you do this work on structure, one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, where's the punchline? So you got these 7 days of reports, and then you've got the introduction plus the 7, and then the 7th one starts with thus, and it seems to be summing things up. Is it summing up just the last day, or is it summing up the previous 2 or 3 days, or all 6 days that came before? So what's the bigger structure? Is it 7, or is it 6 and 1, or is it 5 and 2, 3 and 4? It could be any possibilities. What would you point to in the text that leads you to the conclusion that you come to about the nature of the structure? And then where's the punchline? So does everything lead up to the 6th day and the creation of people, or is all of that still a part of the preparation for the 7th day? Those are the kinds of questions we'll want to talk about, and we'll do so when we get together in our face-to-face. The other thing I'd suggest you do is go back and look at key words. One of the interesting ones is this word separated, that appears a surprising number of times in chapter 1. And if you've never studied or looked closely at kind of the words that make up this report, I think you'll find it interesting and surprising, perhaps. Separated and its opposite here, gathered together. Such that the act of gathering together makes something separate itself. And so there's the verbs that work their way beside just the commands let there be, but then there's also these other kinds of things that go on. Sometimes created order itself gets involved in creation. And for instance, this phrase, the earth brought forth vegetation. What's up with seeds in this chapter? There's just all kinds of things. And of course, the business on then God said, let us make humankind in our likeness. What in the text might help us figure out what the likeness of God is? And the birds of the air, the wild animals of the earth, creeping things on the earth. There are categories of animals, creatures, part of the created order, and the domains that they occupy. Is there a schema that's laid out in this text? So many things we could talk about. Well, we'll do more so when we get together in the face-to-face. Have a great time with this text. We'll talk more about it this weekend. Right close on the heels of Genesis chapter 1 for Creation Theology in the Bible would be Genesis chapter 2, and it's the text that's assigned to you for this part of the week. Genesis chapter 2, as we look at its structure, we've got a nice little introduction in the first few verses. Start at verse 4 and down here through about 8. What's going on in this introductory section? Notice that we've got the repeated noun here, Lord God, Lord God, Lord God, a whole bunch of times. So God moves into the center as the primary actor to which all the verbs go. And look over and try to get a feel for the kinds of verbs. Particularly, you might compare and contrast with the verbs used of God, the way God as a character is described in chapter 1 compared to what we have here in chapter 2. So we got God forming here from man from the dust of the ground and breathing into his nostrils, and as a result the man became a living being. So we got this introduction, then we've got this formation of man, and then an interesting paragraph about a garden, and there's a whole bunch of details about it. It goes on for quite a while here, up through verse 18. So 8 through 17, in one way or another, are a description of where and where it came from, Lord planted it, where it's located, and that it's the place where this formed man is put, and then descriptions of what kind of things went on there and how it's arranged and organized and what kind of stuff is there, and so quite an elaborate description there of the garden. So you want to take a look over that. This passage has something to do with this garden. Finally, then, the last big section, maybe put under the heading of partner. It begins with this statement: it's not good that man should be alone. And we've all heard point made that this is the first time in the text in chapter 1, it is good, it is good, it is good, it is good. And now we finally get to the statement, it was not good. So, and this thing that's not good is for this man to be without partner. So how does the story unfold? In a very interesting way. If this is kind of the problem that needs to be solved, and we have kind of round 1 that has to do with animals, and then finally the creation of woman and the process by which it went, and then this statement at the end, therefore. What's this therefore? Therefore, and all the details about this episode. Whoops. And then when we get here, it's though we pause and make some kind of summary statement. What's this story about? What's its punchline? This kind of a story, by the way, is called an etiology, an origin story about a custom or a name or a place or something like that. What is this an origin story for? And how does it fit into the larger story? And finally, just this one last parting comment. What do you think this has got to do with anything? The man and the wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So get into the text here and get familiar with these details. Take a stab at summing up the point. What point is the writer trying to make, and how did the writer use words to make it? And we'll talk some more about it. I'll see you then this Saturday, and we'll continue our conversation.